one man's career dedicated to Catholic journalism.
I had the bug for it.
It all began in 1970 at the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Manual typewriter. I didn't even have a telephone on my desk.
48 years with the tablet newspaper.
I kind of call Ed the walking Wikipedia.
33 years as editor.
He knows these dioceses, I would say, better than anybody.
And now, pastors and communicators gathering to honor him.
He's a man of passion when it comes to the news.
You're watching a Currents News Special. Ed Wilkinson, Distinguished Communicator.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. The Vatican has recognized World Communications Day since 1967. The day calls us to reflect on the important mission of Catholic journalists. This year's theme, selected by Pope Francis, is Fake News, the truth shall set you free. In the age of thousands of news sources, which ones can be trusted? No doubt, it's a tricky field to navigate, one that oftentimes is riddled with landmines. One man who has been the champion of reporting the truth for nearly 50 years is Mr. Ed Wilkinson. If you read the tablet or watch Net TV, you know the name and the face. Ed has been a cornerstone of bringing the readers and viewers news and information from the Catholic perspective that they may not get anywhere else. For this year's World Communications Day, the Most Reverend Nicholas DiMarzio invited pastors and communicators from the diocese and beyond to gather and celebrate Ed's accomplishments and contributions to Catholic journalism. Currents News' Tim Harfman was at the event, and we begin with this report.
Clergy, journalists, and friends gather at World Communications Day, acknowledging Ed Wilkinson's enormous contributions to the Catholic Church.
It's a little overwhelming, I mean, some people thought I was retiring. I'm not retiring.
But he is receiving a prestigious honor, the annual St. Francis de Sales Distinguished Communicator Award.
I always come to World Communications Day and I see these journalists receive the the Distinguished Communicators Award, and I'm always in awe of the people that get it, so to think that I'm on the list with the same people, it's really a bit humbling.
Some of the biggest names in media and the church are on that list. Newark's Cardinal Joseph Tobin received the award last year.
Ed has given his life to the tablet and to the communications of the diocese, and he's certainly deserving of a recognition for the a life well spent in communicating the message of Christ to the world.
There is a relationship with Ed where it's like you're working with your best friend.
A friend who's also a great teacher. One former colleague driving 700 miles from Indiana to be with Ed in Brooklyn, as he's honored for what he communicates.
Just the sense of the church and the issues that are really relevant to the Catholic Church and to the people of the Catholic Church, not necessarily just what kind of the hierarchy is looking at, but also the people who are down below. Pay attention to everyone.
This year's theme for World Communications Day is from the Gospel of John. The truth will set you free.
That's what our responsibility is telling the truth, letting people know about it, and in a way that people can understand it. The truth is not always transparent to everyone. It has to be explained.
The news chief for the Sales Media Group is Vito Formica. He helps guide the communications arm of the Brooklyn Diocese to get the truth out, in print, on television, and across the internet.
Any which way, multiple platforms that we can use to get news out and the word out, we take advantage of.
The tablet is celebrating its 110th anniversary in print, with Ed Wilkinson at the helm for more than 3 decades. All that time ensuring the truth reaches readers in Brooklyn, Queens, and 45 other states of the country. In Dumbo, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
There is one thing you can bet on each Tuesday night: the tablet goes to press. For 110 years without fail, the newspaper has served its readers. So, just how do you print 75,000 copies of the tablet? Ed Wilkinson recently traveled to the company that houses the massive press that prints the tablet. If you've never seen the process, oh, it really is a sight to see. Take a look.
Faithful sounds and faith-filled print, captioned and shipped out for over a century. In 110 years, the Diocese of Brooklyn's tablet newspaper has never missed an issue.
Always tell people, not on my watch.
Editor Ed Wilkinson says the scripted T made its home in many printing warehouses over the years. Each move coming with new pages and new innovations.
Back in the early days of the tablet, we were printed on the presses of the Brooklyn Eagle. And that was old cold type where letters had to be individually put in, logged into plates.
To now, where the tablet can be hot off the press in less than an hour. And an eye toward the Staten Island Advance's machines, some of the most sophisticated in the country.
You said these are the finished products, right?
John Giustiani, the vice president of operations, says the medieval mastery has become a modern marvel.
It's an artisan, right? It's a skill, it's a craftsman. The pressman, it's not something that you could get somebody off the street to do.
With massive 5-story tall machines thundering and slicing, it's so complicated you can spend a lifetime trying to keep up with its pace.
Now these newspapers are moving. John says that they can do as many as 70,000 per hour. Take a look at how fast it's going.
But let's slow down and take a look at the process.
On Tuesday, we have a hard deadline.
At 6 p.m., tablet staff sends the Staten Island Advance the digital copy of the newspaper. Then,
as it comes through the processor right now, it's going to go onto the conveyor.
Printing plates are etched with the tablet's columns and pictures. The plates are then attached to giant drums. They spin, and the plates are repeatedly coated with ink.
Right now he's doing the magenta plate.
Rolling onto a rubber blanket. The ink then transfers onto the blanket. The sections come together in the middle of the press, they're cut, and they're sent via conveyor belt to be packaged. All the while, the team looks out for mistakes.
They'll look at it and they'll see what corrections they have to make on certain things.
Only when everything's perfect do the papers get bundled to be shipped. John says when he started more than 30 years ago, this whole process could take 8 hours instead of 1.
Basically, none of the technology existed. What these gentlemen are doing right behind us is what we used to do right off the press. We used to just fly it off.
Now the tablet's 75,000 papers fly right from here to almost every state in the country.
A lot of people who retire from Brooklyn, Queens, they move somewhere else, and they take the tablet with them to keep up with the old neighborhoods and to keep up with their parishes.
And for the next 100 years, the tablet vows to keep the faith fit for print. On Staten Island, Michelle Powers, Currents News.
The need and the importance of the Catholic press was recognized as early as the 16th century. Francis de Sales, the patron saint for writers and journalists, used newspapers and books to evangelize. Our guest speaker at World Communications Day knows all about St. Francis. Father Thomas Daly served on the faculty of De Sales University in Philadelphia for 29 years. Currently, he is a full-time faculty member at St. Charles Borromeo Seminary. Here now is Father Daly's address.
Bishop DiMarzio, I am truly honored and grateful for your invitation to join you and the De Sales Media Group and everyone here to celebrate World Communications Day here in the Diocese of Brooklyn, especially on such an occasion when we recognize the critically important work of the tablet and the inestimable contributions of its longtime editor, Ed Wilkinson. As was mentioned, my own work has brought me to the John Cardinal Foley Chair of Communications at the seminary in Philadelphia. Like our honoree today, Cardinal Foley also studied philosophy and journalism, both of which aided in his service at the Vatican as president of the Pontifical Council for Social Communications for 21 years. Prior to that, he too worked as a reporter and a longtime editor at Philadelphia's archdiocesan newspaper, the Catholic Standard and Times. So Ed, he shared that work with you for more than 4 decades. And so I suspect that on this occasion, if he would hear, he would tell you to remember that even though the salary may not be great, the benefits are out of this world. I would like to take this occasion to briefly explore with you all of the benefits that have come to us in this world as a result of Ed Wilkinson's career. His living legacy has had and will have a lasting impact on the continuing work not only of the tablet and the DeSales Media Group, but on Catholic journalism as a whole. To appreciate this, I'd like to draw your attention to some of the more serious words from Cardinal Foley on this subject. Speaking to the World Congress of Catholic Journalists in 2001, he offered 3 pieces of advice that I think you will agree remain timely. He called upon the young journalists, first, to have an unwavering dedication to truth. Not to ideology, he said, not to personal prejudice, not to political correctness or social conformity, but to truth. Second, he implored them to charity. We are not in need of those who arouse angry or hate-filled emotions, he said. We are in need now more than ever of instruments of peace. And lastly, he urged them to communicate hope. Be journalists who always seek to contribute to the building of a better society, he said. Seek out the signs and the people of hope in society and make them better known so that others can know of and emulate good examples and be inspired by good ideas. Dedicated to truth, promoting charity, inspiring hope. If that is the creed of a Catholic journalist, I think you will all agree with me that Ed Wilkinson has professed that creed faithfully in his life and in his work. And in today's era of fake news, that journalistic creed is needed more than ever. In fact, Pope Francis sounds a similar call to truth, charity, and hope in his message for this year's World Communications Day. There he describes journalism for peace as one that rejects rhetorical slogans and sensational headlines, one that offers alternatives to the escalation of shouting matches and verbal violence, one that promotes understanding and contributes to the resolution of conflicts. To counter fake news today, the Pope says, we need a journalism created by people for people, one that is at the service of all, especially those with no voice. Well, for almost 15 years now, Ed Wilkinson has been that voice. First as a sports reporter, then as editor, now news director and senior correspondent. So it's really good that we have gathered here to honor him for fulfilling the mission of being what the Holy Father calls a protector of news. But that mission is not Ed's alone. As Bishop DiMarzio rightly states in his message for Catholic Press Month, all of us must make it our business and task in life to find the truth. Of course, as Catholics, we profess to have found that truth in the person of Jesus Christ, who has told us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nevertheless, along this world's journey to the discovery of truth, we also need reliable and trustworthy sources of information. And for all of you in this diocese, along with so many thousands of others who frequently access its pages online, the tablet has been and continues to be that source. Speaking of Catholic media to a meeting of new bishops, then Archbishop Foley frankly admitted that he was quite prejudiced in favor of diocesan newspapers. And he held this view because he found them uniquely qualified to serve our collective well-being in 5 ways. He said they are sources of information, formation, inspiration, continued Catholic education, and reinforced Catholic identification. More recently, in his 2017 Cardinal Foley Lecture in Philadelphia, Gregory Wilkinson, who is the editor-in-chief of the Catholic News Service, expanded on that view. Speaking about the power of Catholic media today to form, inform, and inspire, he said this: "For parishes and dioceses facing a trio of crises, forming adult Catholics in the faith is a critical need. If we want to shore up parishes stressed by a clergy gap, if we want to shore up Catholic families that are the building blocks of those parishes, and if we want to shore up a parish and family-centered religious education system. Yet most parishes," he continued, "have neither the resources nor the strategies to educate and evangelize today's adults who are themselves the products of this inadequate system." Wilkinson then suggested, accurately in my view, that at this point in U.S. church history, the greatest strategic need facing the church may be in the area of adult faith formation and education. And then he proceeded to argue, rather convincingly, that within this context, a vibrant Catholic media is needed more than ever. Why? Because it is still the most widespread means of ongoing adult faith education and formation that we have today. And so he said, as the church and its parishes face this tsunami of challenges, the role of our Catholic media, the ministry of Catholic media, becomes invaluable. Invaluable, yes, but not inexpensive. So to bolster that necessary mission of faith formation, to draw benefit from a reliable source of news and information, and to carry on the living legacy of today's honoree, my hope is that all of you will continue to support the tablet. By increasing the number of parishes and households who have access to it, you can contribute to changing the landscape of the church's life. Bishop DiMarzio, I thank you for the culture-forming work of the DeSales Media Group, and not just because it's named for the patron saint of my religious congregation. Ed, I thank you for your longtime work and exemplary witness as a Catholic journalist. And I thank all of you for welcoming me here to join you today in celebration of World Communications Day. To conclude, let me draw again upon the words of John Cardinal Foley and make my own the prayerful wish he expressed at his final Catholic Media Conference in 2011, when he said, "May you continue to bring people to truth and to love in a society which needs both." Thank you very much.
Coming up on this Currents News special, more on the remarkable career of Ed Wilkinson, plus a behind-the-scenes look at life at the tablet. Learn why the paper's so important to the diocese, and you'll hear from some of the people who call Ed a living legend.
Wonderful things have been said about him, and I want to put my 2 cents in.
Also ahead, Bishop DiMarzio presents Ed with the Francis DeSales Distinguished Communicator Award. And of course, you'll hear from the editor himself as he gives the keynote address.
Father so-and-so has complained to me about how you're handling this particular issue. I told him I would speak to you, and now I have.
It's easy to subscribe to the tablet. For the discounted price of just $28 a year, you'll receive the tablet in your mailbox. Support the tablet and your diocese by calling 877-883-8356 to subscribe. That number again, 877-883-8356.
Welcome back to this Currents News special. Ed Wilkinson, Distinguished Communicator. No doubt the tablet would not be what it is today without the steady and passionate leadership of its editor. As a colleague and friend of mine, I can tell you that it is an honor to work alongside Ed behind the scenes and on the anchor desk, where we spend days and hours covering epic papal trips. It's always good to know that Ed is there. And as you're about to see, from the moment he joined the tablet, he knew it was exactly where he belonged. Currents News' Michelle Powers reports.
For nearly half a century,
Good morning.
most of Ed Wilkinson's workdays have started at the tablet.
I've always said that if the paper comes out in 1 week and I'm not interested in looking at it, that's the time to go. And it hasn't happened. I still enjoy going through it every week.
His storied career began with a byline.
It was in October of 1970.
Ed was 22. His first assignment, a profile on a choir director.
My first byline, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to be known yet, so it said by Edward Wilkinson.
Little did Ed know he would go on to record some of history's biggest moments. 5 papal visits to New York City.
It's the only time a pope actually walked on the ground in Brooklyn.
The Archdiocese of Boston's sex abuse, the murder of Archbishop Romero, and the installation and ordination of more than 20 bishops in Brooklyn and Queens.
This is our coverage of Bishop DiMarzio's installation.
He'd shake the hand of a saint and photograph another.
I kind of call Ed the walking Wikipedia. So just have someone like Ed here to guide us and the entire team through week by week is really something special.
He knows this diocese, I would say, better than anybody. Bishops come and go, priests come and go. Ed is there.
Yes. Indeed, Ed has stayed true to the tablet. He started as a sports reporter.
Manual typewriter. I didn't even have a telephone on my desk.
Then in 1981, he was promoted to news editor. And in 1985, he took the helm as editor, determined to give the tablet a new image.
Any Catholic in the diocese should be able to pick up the paper and see themselves on those pages. It shouldn't be just the people on the far left or the far right. Everybody should have their say in the paper somehow.
Backed by its rich 110-year-old history, the tablet has cemented itself as the paper of record for the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Is that better?
Reporting news that is objective and unbiased is a pledge the tablet staff upholds each week, covering stories from College Point to Canarsie and Bay Ridge to Bayside.
We want to show every nook and cranny because every piece comes together. It's like a big puzzle. We're part of this 2,000-year story, and even before that with the Old Testament. And that's why it's so important for me to keep the truth in the letter.
I want to talk to you about the spacing and the...
Art Dignam, the CEO of DeSales Media, has worked with Ed for nearly a decade, and he says every minute has been a pleasure.
The first day that I had anything to do with DeSales, I was a consultant. And Monsignor Harrington says, I want you to meet Ed Wilkinson, who runs the tablet for us. He is the epitome of class and professionalism as a journalist.
And I feel like I worked with one of the great masters of the craft of journalism.
The centerfold, the media guide.
Even those who worked at the tablet and moved on to other jobs remember the lessons learned thanks to the editor's mentorship.
He really gave me what I needed to develop fully as a person, as a man, and really as a Christian.
Ed gave John Woods his first job. Now he's the editor of Catholic New York.
When you get a little older, you hear your dad's voice coming out of your mouth. Sometimes I hear Ed's voice coming out of my mouth.
Here he is, the bishop, holding a copy of the tablet.
America's declining trust in secular media is seen as an opportunity for the tablet.
There's a different responsibility when you work for a Catholic newspaper because there's a moral responsibility. We have to morally tell the right story.
Ed says that commitment won't change when he transitions into his expanded role this fall, focusing on growing the paper's subscription base by working closely with the sales media group's Bill Mayer.
It's the glue of the Diocese of Brooklyn. It's the glue to many parishes. It's what connects people to each other. That's what's so critical about the tablet, is that ability to continue to tell stories.
We have a niche market. We're a Catholic newspaper. You're not going to get this news in other places. And if you do get it in other places, they don't always tell it correctly.
As the story of the diocese continues to be written, it may not come as a surprise that Ed Wilkinson's guiding spirit will still keep the pages of the tablet turning.
Stay tuned for Ed's keynote address a bit later, but first, another man who needs little introduction. He is best known as a champion of immigrant rights in what is known as the Diocese of Immigrants. The Most Reverend Nicholas DiMarzio leads the people of the diocese on a spiritual journey toward Christ, and he spoke at the World Communications Day event.
It's my pleasure today to be able to introduce Ed. He's the target tonight. And today, and we want to hear from him. But clearly, wonderful things have been said about him, and I want to put my 2 cents in. He's a man of passion when it comes to the news. There's no question that he loves his job, and he's going to keep the job as long as he can. We know that. We want him to stay around, and he will be helping us, because he has that history and has that unique talent to bring us the news. Our Holy Father in the message for Communications Days talked about a journalism of peace. And I think as I read it to you, you're going to see Ed and his mannerism in this. What the Holy Father says, I do not mean a saccharine kind of journalism that refuses to acknowledge the existence of serious problems or smacks of sentimentalism. On the contrary, I mean a journalism that is truthful and opposed to falsehoods, rhetorical slogans, or sensational headlines. A journalism created by people, for the people, one that is at the service of all, especially those who are the majority in the world, the ones who have no voice. A journalism concentrated on breaking news rather than exploring the underlying causes of conflicts. Each week, well, actually, it's once a month, we do 4 interviews. And he sends it to me the last minute, so I have little time to prepare. He hasn't stumped me yet, but he's tried. And I said today, I'm going to interview you next time. We're going to turn the tables so that I get a chance to stump him. But didn't come yet. But his mannerism is real. You've got to keep your target on edge. If you want to get the truth out, you want to get the real story, and he does that very well with me. And we have a great relationship, and I look forward to those discussions because they do bring things out into the open, which is what journalism is all about, letting people know the truth. Ed, we thank you so much for the dedication that you've shown and will continue to show, and your love for the tablet and for the sales media now. That we open things up and we have a collaboration which is rather unique between our media, between the print media, between the film media, et cetera, but you made the transition, you made it work, and continue to do that. Please, we want to hear from you now.
Still to come on this Currents News special, the life and times of Ed Wilkinson at the helm of the tablet in his own words as he accepts the Distinguished Communicator Award. And a look at the moments that went into making World Communications Day so memorable.
Stay connected to your diocese and your faith. Support the tablet by subscribing today by calling 877-883-8356. For just 56 cents per issue, you will have the paper delivered to your mailbox. We'll be right back.
Ed Wilkinson Wilkinson joins an extraordinary list of honorees who have received the St. Francis de Sales Distinguished Communicator Award. Newark's Cardinal Joseph Tobin was named last year. This list also includes communication experts within the Vatican, Archbishop Claudio Maria Celli and Father Thomas Rosica. And now, here's Ed's keynote address.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming today, and I want to thank the people who are really responsible for putting this together, especially our Director of News and Development, Vito Formica, whose vision it was to put this whole thing together. And it wouldn't have happened except for the day-to-day attention to detail that Michelle Powers put into this thing. She's responsible for that video. She's hiding somewhere. The people of the sales media are really like a family. It's true, and like some families, we have some good days and we have some bad days. But in the end, it all comes together, and as you can see today, it comes out pretty nicely sometimes. I'm hesitant to mention everybody. I could talk about everybody in this room, but I'm hesitant to do that because I don't want to leave anybody out. But I do want to mention one other person, and that's Mark Steele, who's our very talented creative designer who designed this whole room today for us. I see some people in the audience who have traveled pretty far distances to come here today. I'm very grateful to them. My dear friends Katie Rudder and her husband Brian came all the way from Indiana, and I want to be grateful. And one of my esteemed mentors, Frank DeRosa, and his wife Lillian. You all know Frank. And Dennis Paust and his wife Mary came down from Albany. Thank you very much. And before I get into what I really wanted to say, I want to introduce my wife to you, Sheila. Just stand up for a minute. I'm serious when I say without her understanding, I wouldn't have been at all of those diocesan events every weekend. But she knew what we were getting into when we got married 28 years ago, and thank God it worked. Bishop DiMarzio, thank you for presenting me with the Distinguished Communicator Award. I appreciate it very much. When I look at the names of the people who have received this in the past, I'm a little bit in awe to think that my name is right next to theirs, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But I also want to thank you for the great attention and the concern that you have shown personally to diocesan communications since you came to the diocese 15 years ago. It shows itself in the establishment of the sales media, where you brought all of the communications agencies together, and we work together and we benefit from one another's talents. So thank you for your concern. It's no secret that across the country there are dioceses that don't have diocesan newspapers anymore. And that's because in some way or other they've been let go. And Bishop DiMarzio has paid very great attention to the tablet, and I thank him for that. Over the past 48 years, I've worked for 3 bishops, and for the last 33 years as editor. And I've been privileged to serve those 3 bishops, each one unique and different from one another. But I have to say, Bishop, you have shown your utmost interest in the tablet, and I know that we would not be publishing today if it was not for your support. So thank you. I enjoy your feedback at all times. It's a fact that over the past 100 years, there have been only 3 editors of the tablet. That's a record in itself. Patrick Scanlon was the editor for 51 years. And then Don Zirkel took over, and he was the editor for 17 years. And now I've had the post for the last 33 years. And 10 years ago at our centennial dinner, Bishop DiMarzio critiqued the editors. And he critiqued them in this way. I don't know if you remember this. He said Patrick Scanlon kind of leaned to the right. He said, Don Zirkel, he was more on the left. And he said, and now we have Wilkinson, I don't know where he fits in. But since then, Bishop, I think you've gotten a better idea of who I am. I think you've noticed that I'm just another loyal member of the church here in the diocese who's trying hard to tell the story of the church here in Brooklyn and Queens. It's quite a unique story to tell. And as a matter of fact, I think a good editor probably should not show his leanings one way or the other. If you don't know exactly where I stand, I'm probably doing a pretty good job trying to be fair and impartial. And the only thing that I don't waver on is the fact that we are a Catholic newspaper and we have quite a unique story to tell here about a church that's alive in the neighborhoods of Brooklyn and Queens. After that, there are plenty of ways of being a Catholic, and some may be better than others, but I've always tried to include everybody on the pages of the tablet. I said in the video there, no matter where you stand, you should be able to find or see yourself somewhere on the pages of the tablet. As journalists, we try to be fair and impartial, but we always start from a Catholic point of view. That's non-negotiable. New York Times starts from a secular humanist point of view. It's not a bias, it's just where we're coming from. We are Catholic, and we're not ashamed of that. Let me say something about the other two bishops that I've alluded to. I was appointed editor by Bishop McGoverill in 1985, and everyone loved Bishop McGoverill. Some might thought he was a little bit too liberal, but he was a great man. Nobody disliked Bishop McGoverill. Everybody loved him. And it was a Thursday. I was the acting editor at the time. It was a Thursday, September 26, 1985, when the phone rang in the office and my secretary, Margie, answered. And she said, Ed, it's Bishop McGoverill. Now, in those days, it was unusual to have the bishop call the office. It just didn't happen. So when he did, it usually was not good. But I took the call, and it was the bishop himself on the other end. And he said, Ed, as you know, the board of directors is meeting right now here at the Chancery, and I'm going to send your name down to them as my choice to be the next editor. And then he paused, and he said, that is if you still want the job. I said, of course, Bishop, I still wanted the job. So he told me to call the next day and make an appointment to come see him, call Monsignor Lavin, get on the calendar. So when the appointed time came, I walked down to the Chancery, down Hanson Place to Green Avenue, and went up to see the bishop at 75 Green Avenue. I figured, well, this is it. This is when I really find out how you do this job, the secret in and outs of it, you know. So the bishop started by telling me, you got to watch those headlines. I said, all right, it's Journalism 101. He said, headlines should always tell what the story is about. He said, that's where you get in trouble with those headlines. I said, okay. And then he said, and if you ever can keep me out of trouble, that would be good too. That was the entire meeting, 3 minutes. That was the McGoverill formula for being a good editor. The only other time he called me down to the office, and I knew it wasn't good, Monsignor Lavin called and he said, Bishop would like to see you. Okay. So I sat down with him this time at the Chancery and he said, Ed, Father so-and-so has complained to me about how you're handling this particular issue. I told him I would speak to you, and now I have. That was it. I never got called on the carpet again. By Bishop McGoverill, that is. When Bishop Daley was appointed in 1990, I have to tell you I was a little nervous. We didn't know Bishop Daley, but he came with a reputation of being kind of a tough guy. And the first time I met him, I still wasn't sure about if I was feeling too good about it. He kind of lumbered into the room, you know, big John Wayne kind of guy that he is. I heard him coming long before I saw him. And he introduced himself to me, and I said who I am. I'm Ed Wilkinson. I'm the editor of the tablet. and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "We're going to have a good time." I wasn't sure what his idea of a good time was. And for a while I was worried, but it wasn't too long before I realized that with Bishop Daly, sometimes his bark was louder than his bite. You know? He was genuinely one of the nicest men you could ever know. It was painful to watch him deteriorate in his final days out in Douglaston, but I'm grateful that we have a building named in his honor now, senior housing over there in Prospect Heights. But Bishop Daly became like the family bishop. He attended my wedding and he baptized my son. When I bought the house in Bay Ridge, he came out and blessed it and stayed for dinner with the family. We had a nice conversation. He fell asleep, of course, on the... nobody minded. It was Bishop Daly. Now, when I heard that Bishop DiMarzio was coming to Brooklyn, well, we knew his name because the rumor was out there, Didn't know who he was, though. So I called the only person I knew who personally knew him, and that was my classmate, Monsignor Ron Marino. And I said, "Ron, what's he like?" So Marino says to me, "He's not going to be a problem. Don't worry." He said, "You're going to have to work, though. He likes guys who work." I said, "All right, well, that doesn't seem to be a problem." Little did I know that Bishop DiMarzio's idea of a journalist is not just print, but it's television, it's radio. You do a little bit of everything. But Bishop, I've enjoyed it, and we enjoy the challenge. I want to acknowledge the large number of priests who are here today. For virtually my entire life, I think I've been indebted to Brooklyn priests from the day that I was baptized in 1948. When I was in the 3rd grade, I memorized all of that Latin, and I became an altar boy. I'm not sure you can get 3rd graders to do that anymore. But it was then that I began to know the priests in the parish, and these were guys we looked up to, people that you wanted to be like. And from them, and encouraged by them, I found out about Cathedral Prep, where every teacher I had in the classroom was a priest. They were a tremendous group of men who not only taught, but they took personal interest in each student. On days off, they would open up the gym. They would organize trips into Manhattan. I'm thinking of people like Fathers Ed Troike, and Tom Brady, and Joe Martusciello, and Ed Breen. Monsignor Jack Casey, who's going to be 90 later this year, and he's still working out in Queens Village. These were great men. I looked up to them. Went to Douglaston, and again, I didn't have a lay teacher until 3rd year college in Cathedral College, Douglaston. It was all priests and sisters before that. So I owe a lot to the priests and to the church and to the sisters. I got my interview at the Tablet, as a matter of fact, through another Brooklyn priest, Father Doug Brown. I was working with him in Epiphany Youth Center in Williamsburg, South Williamsburg. Today it's a trendy neighborhood, but it wasn't so then. When I started at the Tablet, the priests were my biggest contacts. I could reach out to former classmates and professors, and the more I got to know, the larger my base of operations became. And I still take pride in getting to know the new priests as well as knowing the Golden Jubilarians. They're a great bunch of men, the Brooklyn Presbyterian, so thank you very much. As I begin this new phase in my career, as the bishop said, I'm not retiring. I'll be relying on the priests of Brooklyn and Queens once again. My new title will be Editor Emeritus. So I'm hoping that maybe some pastor emeritus can explain to me what emeritus means. I think it means they still give you things to do, but nobody listens to what you have to say. One of my assignments will be to work closely with the sales media COO, Bill Mayer, who's with us today. And we'll be renovating and reimagining our circulation and subscription policy so that tablet finances can be gradually shifted away from the parish's responsibilities and into individual subscriptions. It's a daunting task, but we're going to do what we can. And to do that, I'm going to need the help of you priests, pastors, as we transform a policy that has been in effect for more than 50 years, since before I came to the Tablet. It's going to require individual visits to parishes. I'll need information from pastors about mailing lists and ways that we could solicit individual subscriptions. But generally speaking, I'm going to be relying on your goodwill and your cooperation as we attempt to reverse the engines of our finances. So when I ring the bell or make the call, please answer. We're doing this because we believe parishes need financial relief. I don't have to tell that to you. And also because we believe there's still a future for the print media. In spite of all the hoopla about the new social media, there's still a demand for and the need for a print copy of the newspaper that you can hold in your hand. I mean, how many folks have you talked to who say, I just feel more comfortable holding the paper and sitting in a chair reading the news? It's not always easy to read the news, from a screen. It goes hand in hand with the media to give you a complete picture of what's happening in the world. The social media, the electronic media, the print media, they all complement one another. We think that the print copy allows us to go a little bit more into depth. And the print media, I believe, also serves as a gateway to the electronic and other social media. We work closely with each other at the sales, with the people at Currents News. They put on the daily news show. You should watch it. Even Bishop DeMario said he learns about what's going on in the diocese from the sales. The print copy also allows the readers to talk back to us in letters to the editor and to submit detailed responses in op-ed pieces. And it also gives you a sense of belonging to a larger community. That's what a diocesan newspaper should do. You're not just a solitary figure sitting there isolated in front of a screen. You're part of a community. And the church is all about community. We need that interaction. As I said on the screen here, the Catholic press is a niche market. It tells you the story from the Catholic perspective that you're certainly not going to get from the secular press. We can deal with stories of special local diocesan events like anniversaries and deaths and religious congresses and things like that the secular media is just going to ignore. It's not news to them. It is to us. It allows us to show the special pride we take in things like ordinations and Catholic schools and our CYO and parish teams and special feast days. We used to have a saying, all the things you care about, you'll read more about in the tablet. And while we like to say that we're the good news newspaper, we also do not shy away from the bad news. Sometimes the good news involves bad news, and I don't think I have to go into any examples of that today. They're all too obvious, sometimes very painful to report. But ultimately, the mission is to tell the joyful news that Jesus has risen and lives today in our church, in the world, in the nation, and in our own neighborhoods right here in Brooklyn and Queens. As many of you know firsthand, one of the many joys of leading the tablet over these years has been directing the Bright Christmas campaign. It's one of the many ways I feel that we're able to use the power of the media to give back to the parish communities, to use our platform to make a difference. The numbers tell the story here, and I'm proud to report that this past Christmas, the tablet raised and distributed a total of $127,000. We asked our finance department to do a little research for us. Total contributions, some big, some small, they really do add up year after year. Take a look at this graph. Between 2011 and 2017, thanks to our wonderful tablet readers, Bright Christmas has raised more than $910,000. That's almost $1 million. And it's money that's given right back to parishes who need it most. We're very proud of that, and we pledge to continue to carry on this tradition which highlights the spirit of the season. It's been my privilege to have been the guardian of the tablet, a vehicle of good news, for these past 33 years, and to have been part of telling the story of the church in Brooklyn and Queens for 48 years. The tablet I see as a precious jewel. I'm stealing that from Bill Mayer. It's a precious jewel, that belongs to us here in Brooklyn and Queens, and I believe we take special pride in it. We need to preserve it, and we need to help it prosper even further in the years to come, and I think it will. It has been an honor to be part of this legacy, and I'm very grateful for having had the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to continuing to tell the good news story in the years to come. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And the man himself joins us now, Ed Wilkinson. What a remarkable day. I think everyone had a good time. Did you have a good time?
I had a good time. You know, sometimes it's difficult when you're the center of attention to have a good time. For me, anyway, I don't like being the center of attention.
And I think people know that humility about you, but I mean, it is well deserved. I like to tell the story that I interviewed with you on a Wednesday and you hired me on a Friday, which is either a testament to my talent or your mental state.
I knew I wanted you right away.
But my point in saying that is you've changed so many lives. Do you ever stop and think about the impact that you've had on the diocese and the industry over the course of so many years?
You know, I mean, during this past couple of months, there's been like a period of reflection while I've been going through this transition period now. And you stop and think, and people say things like that to me, but it's just been, I just show up for work every day, you know? It's just been one day after the other, and I've loved what I've done, and I've had a good time doing it, and I've enjoyed all the people that I've worked with. That it's kind of tough to kind of put it all in perspective.
You've had some remarkable moments, stuff that people could only dream about. You've met wonderful people. Who would you say, and I'm putting you definitely on the spot right now, stands out the most?
Well, there's one day that just stands out in my memory, and that's the day I met Pope John Paul II. It was back in 1995 when he was making a visit to New York here. And I had written a column in the tablet about when the Pope comes to America, he should meet with the Catholic press. And actually, people took that seriously, you know. So somebody in Washington called me from the bishop's office and said, would you be available to meet with the Holy Father? I said, oh my God. So they invited the 4 editors from the different dioceses that he was visiting. And we were all gathered at the nuncio's residence up in Manhattan on the Upper East Side there, just before he was going to say Mass in Central Park. And we were brought into a room, and the Pope came in, and we were allowed to greet him before he went off to Mass. I gave him a copy of the tablet.
Of course you did. You always did. You think on your feet there, Wilkinson. You've also had an opportunity to be very close to Pope Francis as well. This journey has taken you on so many wonderful rides.
Yeah, when the Pope landed at Kennedy Airport, and when he departed from Kennedy Airport, I was got to be the official photographer right down there on the tarmac, you know. And you know, the security is enormous at things like that, but there I was, you know, I could have reached out and touched Pope Francis. I just kept snapping pictures.
You've seen so much. You've seen so many changes. What do you expect from this industry now?
Well, you know, when I started, I had a manual typewriter, and I kid because I didn't even have a telephone on my desk. I had to go out into the hall to make a phone call. So, I mean, it just kept changing, and you have to stay ahead of it. One thing I have to say, though, people keep talking about the death of print, and I don't see print dying out. I think it's always going to be a component. You know, we've got all kinds of social media now. We've got TV and all kinds of stuff, but I think print will always be there. It's always going to be a component, and it's kind of like the basic skill, you know, knowing how to write.
And you're still such an integral part of our company and what we do here. What will you do to make sure that print stays in the forefront? Because I think it's important.
People keep thinking I'm retiring, you know, but I'm not retiring.
No, you're staying, baby. We're not letting you go.
No, I'll still be working with, you know, the people who will be the transition team that's coming in to run the tablet, and I'll be working with the reporters and doing some copy editing, and I'm also going to be working on circulation and subscriptions to try to get away from this parish-based subscription plan that we have. You know, right now the parishes pay for it. We want to get individual subscriptions to the paper. That's what I'm going to be working on. It's going to be a daunting task, but I hope I'm up to it.
You are up to it. Salt of the earth. It's a pleasure working with you. I'm happy you're not going anywhere because the diocese needs you and we need you as well. Thank you so much.
Love working with you.
Oh, of course you do. Thank you, Ed. And please stay with us. Next, a special wrap-up of World Communications Day.
Do you enjoy reading about news that matters from the Catholic perspective? Subscribe to the tablet. call 877-883-8356. That's 877-883-8356. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We will wrap up by saying congratulations to Ed Wilkinson for his great and continuing contribution to the tablet, Net TV, and of course the Diocese of Brooklyn. We leave you now with a look back at the special day where so many of his friends and his colleagues gathered to honor him. I'm Liz Faubelis, and I hope to see you again next time.